trust, nah, don't give no fucks. Dropping them motherfucking Beez. In God I trust.
I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, without further ado, we're going to jump in and review Kid Cudi's third album, Indicud. Kid Cudi, been around for a little bit. We actually reviewed his second album, Man on the Moon 2, Legend of Mr. Rager, a couple of years ago now, and actually we liked that album.
I loved it. I gave it like an upper 80s, I think.
Yeah, Kid Cudi has a really, personal and identifiable way of constructing beats and atmosphere and putting a lot of thought behind his lyrics. I know we were both fans of his flow.
Yeah.
Now, here on Indicud, we see a bit of a transition in sound. Man on the Moon 2, that was a long album. That was a 60-minute album.
Yeah.
This is a 70-minute album, and it's slightly... how would you describe the beats and the sound of this album, Tom?
Well, right away from the instrumental intro track, it's almost slightly like industrial. I almost hate using that term just because it's so general, but
what I noticed is that you really have like a basic beat structure, but then there's a lot of synths kind of forming this like sonic palette behind the beats, and then Kid Cudi does his thing on top of it.
And it's almost more about those thick, kind of gritty, swirling synths than it is the beats themselves, because the beats aren't really hugely fat or complex in their arrangement. It's really just there to kind of anchor the song down and move it along while you have those synths moving in the background.
Yeah, the beats definitely, in my opinion, took a step down. Now, I think it's a good thing to kind of say to you guys that Kid Cudi did mostly self-produce this one, whereas he's had help in the past. So I think that that's where a major role of the sound change came from. Now, one thing I have to say is I also noticed a change in style in both his lyrics and his delivery. I felt like on this one, his delivery was much more lazy, much more just kind of just off the top of his tongue, just kind of spitting things out. And actually, he presents this idea in track 2, Unfuckwittable, which I actually had to look up what the heck that was referring to, what sort of urban term that was. And it turns out that sort of means, I guess what I read from that is that his style doesn't really, you can't copy it, you can't recreate it because it doesn't follow any rules. And that's definitely true. However, I would not attest that that really adds value to the sound of Indicud. I found that the lyrics and the vocals were one major thing that pulled me down on this album.
Well, the thing that I really liked about Man on the Moon 2, and if you go back and watch our review, I remember saying this, I loved the introspective lyrics. I loved that I didn't get a huge amount of ego from it. I just felt like I was getting the real Kid Cudi, you know? And here, it's a complete shift to just the typical drivel of, I want to bang girls, I want to go out and party, I need to smoke.
That's a literal lyric from the album. It's straight from that one song.
Yeah, I just feel like it's
actually all over the album.
Yeah, it really is.
Which, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I understand that that's a part of the culture that Kid Cudi comes from. So I really don't have a problem with the lyrical content, but it's how it's presented. It's not like, I really don't care if you want to write an album about banging bitches and smoking pot. That's cool. Just do it in a creative way, like, that you have to think before you say things.
Like Dre 2K.
Yeah.
Which is funny because Kid Cudi compared this to Dre 2K, said this was like his 2001. In what universe does that comparison hold water?
The beats aren't as good. The hip-hop delivery is the rhymes aren't good. It's not funny at all. I mean, I don't find this album to be funny at all. Other than the fact of how it's being presented to me, I find the quality to be kind of funny because I found most of the sound presentation, the synths that we're using, the lengths of these songs, I mean, really aren't that bad. You know, anywhere from 2.5 minutes to 5 minutes on average. And to tell you the truth, they all feel so much longer than that. And it's because that the songs don't really go anywhere. You have a verse, maybe some semblance of a chorus every now and then, but the songs just kind of have these outro parts that just trail on and on and on. And I just feel like there's not a lot of value add. And there are just so many points on this album where I just go, what the hell am I listening to? Why is this so bad? Starting like Unfuckwittable, I just think that the actual vocal tones, Kid Cudi is trying to sing on this album, and that's something that he only did very infrequently before.
Yeah, and those are all over this album, especially in the front half. But, you know, I think we started this review trying to be somewhat ambiguous, and now we've just descended into the point where we just absolutely hate this album.
That's
there's no hiding it anymore. We really hated this. For me, I'll go out and say I think this is the worst album I've listened to since Nicki Minaj's Roman Reloaded. I just think it's that bad. I would rather listen to Muse's Second Law all day than listen to this. I don't really have anything good to say. Every aspect of hip-hop music that I value, that I analyze, this album fails at.
I have something good we can say.
Oh, no.
On the track Beez, he features RZA,
yeah.
just as James Blake did.
Yes.
And RZA nails it.
Yeah,
RZA does a great job.
Does.
Because, Wu-Tang Clan and nothing to fuck with.
Yeah, it's true.
And RZA does a good job, but everything else, he features Michael Bolton later in a 9-minute song.
Yeah.
And afterwards...
what happens afterwards, Dick?
He'll show me his dance. I don't want to see Michael Bolton's dance. And honestly, I don't even like that track that much because it's 9 minutes. It doesn't justify itself at all. It just kind of meanders. And Michael Bolton, while I do think that, I know we were talking about this before we turned on the camera, I do think that he did a good job presenting his vocal contribution to that song. I don't really feel like it fits the song or the production or the mood. And even though, some ideas are being, different ideas and new ideas to Indicud are being presented there, I don't feel like it was a cohesive statement. I don't feel like anything on this album really was anything more than some loose idea that wasn't well thought or wasn't well planned, and it definitely wasn't well presented. I mean, every single aspect of this album that you present to me, I will say, fails on at least some level. I think the most successful thing, Tom, is the beats, and unfortunately the beats aren't anywhere near ambitious.
No, they're not.
And really, I don't think I can't understand how anyone can be excited about these beats on this album, and that's the best thing it has going for it.
Well, he's using a lot of the same sounds, and not only the beats, but those synths we were talking about, and there's a fine line between unity and redundancy when it comes to music. You want an album to sound cohesive and to come together, but you also don't want it to be redundant and just hammer the same point home for almost 71 minutes.
Right.
And that's the thing, I think length plays into that too, because shorter albums, I think, are allowed to sound a little more unified if it can make an impactful statement. This does not. It just sounds the same throughout. I think the guest spots are bad. I think Kid Cudi's parts are bad. When he tries to sing, it sounds terrible. The hooks are awful. They're not memorable. The lyrics are corny, surface level, cheesy, just completely superficial crap. I can't think of really anything good to say about this.
I'll throw him a bone. He tried, as he did on his previous release, he tried to structure it as an album listening, as an intro track and an outro track, but I mean that doesn't really serve the album at all when everything in the middle is just absolutely garbage.
Everything in the middle doesn't play along with that. It doesn't build upon that. And I mean, for me, I actually like Solo Dolo Part 2 decently, and by that, by that I mean it's one of the maybe 2 or 3 tracks I could tolerate, but everything before that, tracks 2 through 6, are just awful. Just absolutely awful. And then Girls is probably one of the worst songs on the album.
Yeah.
And then
I think Red Eye's up there.
Red Eye is really bad. Actually, Matt, I'm just looking at every track and thinking this is just terrible. I could just go on and on. I mean, the only other song that was tolerable to me was Beez, and I did actually like that in Afterwards. Well, I think you're right. It's not justified in its length, and a lot of the actual content in there is pretty crappy. I do like that it at least kind of switches up the mood a little bit. It's something we didn't really see previously in the album, but it's also on an unjustified 9-minute track right at the end of the album. It's too little too late, and not really even that good as it is.
Yeah, I completely agree. What would you give it?
I'm going to give it a 38.
I'm going lower than you. I'm giving this a 30. So.
Oh man, I must have liked this so much more than you.
You must have. I don't know, that 30 range. In the 30 range, you probably don't want to listen to this album.
Yeah.
In fact, if anything, I would say only listen to this album in case you want to make fun of Kid Cudi. Now, unfortunately, Kid Cudi actually is a guy with a lot of talent, as we saw in his previous records. It's just that he didn't show it here, and he still has time to kind of right the ship and make sure that his next album is successful. I just don't know after hearing this if that's really in his repertoire of ability. I don't think if he has that in him, because I mean this was unfocused. He thinks it's great because he compared it to 2001, so it must be great, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't think that if this is the direction he's going, that he's going to continue to have much success. However, we are much lower than the average critic out there. I know this has a 67 on Metacritic the last time I checked, so people are liking this. What did you guys think? Let us know at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. If you like this, shoot us a note and tell us why, because clearly we missed something then. Also, follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook, because that's where we get the 2013 albums we're reviewing from you guys. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.
KID, searching all day in the streets for DMT. Don't sip it, don't, it could enhance a trip all day, bobbing MGMT. Who me? Watch out who you